Welcome everybody to the In Conversation series, the BTM Club's In Conversation series. And as you know, it is about the musical legends that have given us pleasure over the last 20, 30, and sometimes 40 years. And today, see, he's laughing there. At least you didn't fit into the 50-year category, so that's quite good.
Yeah, I'm not quite at the 40-year category.
That's right.
Just almost.
Here we have Mr. Byron Stingley. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Nice to see you. We finally made it happen. And definitely you are one of the legends that we need to talk to.
Oh, thank you.
How have you been?
I've been really good. I've been really, in spite of everything, in spite of it being a pandemic and lots of things like that, but I've been very well and just very hopeful that all of this pandemic stuff will come to an end soon.
Yes, I think we're all hoping that. We are all hoping that.
Yes.
But how have you used the time? Have you been writing? Have you been creating? Because a lot of the musicians I've been speaking to have been saying, you know, they've used the time to write and still create.
It was kind of difficult at first because I, just when it first happened, last year when it first happened, it just trying to find like positive thoughts at the time and to fight through that to write positive music. I like to write music that uplifts the spirit, and so it took a minute to get in that headspace. But once we got, I've worked on a 10-city album that will be out in mid-June, and once we got to working on our album, it was like something. It was escapism for me, and it allowed me like to really get in a really good headspace. And what really helped is that I got a chance to work with my original songwriting partner, Marshall Jefferson. We got a chance to work together.
Now let's not give the whole interview away in the first 10 minutes.
but just working with my brother. Again, this really made me feel really good. I felt like a kid again.
But I guess that whole thing of going into the pandemic was a situation that we all had to adjust to and adapt to.
Yes.
And once you had adjusted, you then kind of, thought, well, this is the path. I can do this or I can do that.
It's funny because a lot of people don't notice. I've been in school to get my quote unquote doctorate degree, and I had one last I got one last dissertation to do, and right when I was getting ready to start on my dissertation, I got a call. And it was a week before America went into lockdown. I got a call from two of the heads from Ultra Music, Mr. Waxman and Mr. Moxley. They called me and said, "Hey, we're coming to town. We would love to sit down and meet with you." And I didn't really have an idea what they were coming to meet with me for. And then when they got here, they said, "How would you be interested in doing another 10-city project?" And so it was like the perfect time, and it was a week before we went into the pandemic, and it was very, 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 very. It was the timing of it all just seemed to be really perfect.
Right. So
a little weird.
Just before the pandemic, they brought you this proposal, which meant during the time in the pandemic, you could be at home working on it, right?
Yes, and this was also a really weird. It was really different too because I would cut vocals at my studio here in Chicago. Marshall would do his piano parts. I would cut vocals. He would add more parts. I would send what we had. I have a background singer who does arrangements named L. I live in Chicago. He lives 2,000 miles away from me in LA. I would send him my parts. He would add backgrounds. I would add more, send it back to him. He would send the computer files of everything to the guitar player. Guitar player would lay his part, bass player, drummer. And then it's like, you know what, this needs real strings. I have a very good friend named Martin who lives in Virginia, which is on the East Coast. I would
Right.
send it to Martin, and he would put strings, and then he would send it to violin players, and they would put the violins and horns, and so it was very different doing producing a record basically over the internet with people all over the world, and then even to send it to these guys out of England, they call themselves Who, to send it parts to them, and then they would do their parts. DJ Spin and Maurice Joshua and Immaculate, some of the people who worked on, and even I got Josh Milan to add a verse to one of the
Okay.
songs, and that was interesting.
I think that is one of the common denominators with all of the people I've spoken to. The record industry has changed so much that now you haven't got to necessarily be hiring a studio for a fortune and traveling to studios together. You can cut a record, make music in different parts of the world, and just put it together digitally.
Yes. Yes, it's so funny because years ago when we were working on our first album, I still remember this. Marshall Jefferson turned to me and said, you know, in 30 years from now, we'll be able to do an album. We could be in different cities and we could send our parts over the computer. And I was like, and he's like one of these sci-fi people. He watch a lot of Star Trek and
Yeah.
a lot of Trekkie, and he was always talking about, anyhow, I'll leave that alone, aliens and you know, Marshall's a different kind of, he was always talking about technology and how music would
Mr.
change.
Futuristic.
Yes, very futuristic guy. Very,
Brilliant.
and some of the things he said has turned out to be right.
Yeah, indeed. But as we all know, this gentleman here, Mr. Byron Stingley, we know him really as 10 City, the voice of 10 City. So tell me your journey. How did it start in music?
My journey in music started, it's something I always knew I wanted to do. Started at an early age, just watching American television and seeing artists like Chubby Checker doing the twist, James Brown. And then I really fell in love with music when I got a chance to see the Jackson 5 perform, and a little kid named Michael Jackson. And I was like, you know, and he had an afro and I had an afro, and I just saw myself, you know, saw the possibilities, and just grew up on the whole Motown song, and being from Chicago, watching Curtis Mayfield and groups like the Ohio Players, and I just had a deep love for music. I mean, I could go on and on. I could speak all day about music and lyrics.
That's why you're here. That's why you're here. But so you were always a Chicago boy?
I've always been a Chicago boy, and I know when we first came out, people always used to tell me to move to London or move to New York, and those were the places people always wanted me to move to. At one point in time, I did keep a place down in Camden, off of Albert Street in Camden, and
Okay, yeah.
I had a place in off of Baker Street for a little while, so I did keep like a little apartment in England.
Oh, you had your London connection then?
Yeah, I had a in London connection. I used to stay up. Sometimes used to stay up with my good friend Eric. I used to stay up by Muswell Hill. Big shout out to Eric Dial and my friend Tony Ross.
You know Eric very well.
Yeah.
So where did music start for you? There was never anything else, because sometimes people, they don't necessarily get their vocation. Others know from the beginning, you know what, this is what it's always going to be for me. Is that how it was for you?
Yeah, I had doubts. I mean, but I had doubts along the way. I mean, I played in bands all through my teenage years. I played in what we would call new wave bands and things like that. And I had the blonde mohawk hairdo and things like that, and just played, you know, with the really way out clothes and the Doc Marten boots and all of that. I played in different bands, played some keyboards, percussions, played some drums and things like that in different groups coming up. And I don't know, I also was aspiring athlete a little bit. I played a little basketball, ran a little track, also played a little what you call soccer. You know,
Okay.
when we say
You're
football,
a bit of an all-rounder. You had your hands in everything.
yeah, I was a bit somewhat of an athlete. I don't know how. I played 2 years of basketball in college, and then at that point, I was still playing in bands and playing basketball. And then at that point, one of my friends, I tell this story all the time. One of my good friends, Vince Lawrence, he was putting out records. He actually wrote one of the first #1 pop house records, and that was Love Can't Turn Around. He was a writer on that.
Remember it well.
And
That
Vince told me, yeah, big hit. He was one of my really good buddies. And he told me, hey, you're always, because I was a club kid, I was always going to the parties and stuff. He said, you're always at the parties. How come you don't do house music? And I said, actually, I was like, because house music just seems to, at the time, I said, to be very faceless. You don't really know who the artists are. And he was like, let's be a big part of changing all of that. He said, let's be the pioneers and let's develop our own sound. And then he told me that he had just bought I misheard him or something. It was a miscommunication. He told me he had just bought a Ferrari, and it got me excited. And then when I came home, I saw him like drive down the street and go past me in a Pontiac Fiero. It was a Fiero, which I don't know if you had that car in England.
We don't, but I know it. From my frequent visits to the States, I know it.
It was a little bitty, small, low-budget car, and two-seater, and he passed me in a Fiero, and I said, "That's not a Ferrari. It's a big difference. It's about a couple $100,000 difference in the price." So, but anyhow, that's what brought me home from college and got me to doing house music.
So that was your introduction to house music.
Well, I was a club kid, and I was at all the house parties.
So you heard other people making house music.
I heard other people. I heard
that was kind of your introduction to thinking.
That was my introduction.
I'm going to get into the scene myself. So when you said you were in bands before that era, what music were you playing then?
Playing people like Jeffrey Osborne.
Okay, so you were doing covers, but R&B.
I was in a cover band playing Jeffrey Osborne, soul music. People like a lot of Prince, a lot of the group at the time, and then I also I played in some soul bands, and I also got offered a record deal right out of high school, and I it was like through a production company through CBS Records, and I did not accept the deal at the time.
Oh, really? CBS? Okay.
Yes.
So I decided. You were big straight from the beginning.
I had big plans from the beginning.
High places.
Yes, and I had somebody who's had someone who just came and sat beside me who was not supposed to be out this.
Get him in the frame. We want to see him. This is the dog that we were talking about the other day, right?
1 second. I don't want any animal lovers to get mad at me. For 1 second.
Where is he? Let me see him. Come on, bring him in. Fantastic. You know I'm not gonna edit this out, okay? This is staying in. This is staying in. Okay. That's right. You say your piece. You say your piece. So you then got into house music. What was the connection? How did you get to work with Mr. Jefferson himself?
Funny story. Me and Marshall, like Chicago, even though it's a big city, a lot of people know people and this. So we had a lot of mutual friends, and a lot of people don't know this. Marshall was also people don't know this because Marshall was actually a boxer, and I knew
really?
pretty good amateur boxer, and so I knew Marshall from just mutual friends and different things like that. And I was actually in the studio recording a song, and it was going to come out on Trax Records. Marshall was in the other room recording, and he already had out like the Virgo 1 tracks and things like that. So he put out Are You Hot Enough? You know, and that was like, so for me, for house music, at that point in time, I had my favorite artist at that time was Marshall Jefferson.
Right.
And Larry Heard. Those were my, they had like, so house music had just began to come out, but I loved Marshall Jefferson's music and Larry Heard. And so I was in the studio recording, and Marshall came in, and when I was in a band, and when the guys in my band found out that I was actually getting ready to put out a record, they all came in and wanted to play on the record. So, but instead of just playing the nice groove and to make the record, everybody like, oh, this is going to be a record. So the guitar player just wanted to play all these crazy lyrics.
Everybody wanted to be the lead. So they would get noticed.
They want to get noticed, and everyone like came in and played and basically destroyed the song that I was working on.
Wow.
So that's how I felt at the time, and I was just sitting there like, wow, this is ruining the whole session. Marshall walked in the room, and I was sitting in the back corner of the studio, and he said, wow, he said, this is a really well-written song. He was like, he said, did you write the lyrics? I said, yeah, I wrote the lyrics. He said, those are some of the best lyrics and melody I've ever heard. But he said, you know, this music sucks, right? He said, you know, this music sucks. It's horrible, right? You are aware of that. And I was kind of like, okay, thanks for the advice. And he said,
did you know who he was at the time when he was giving you this
I knew who he was.
Okay.
And I was just like, yeah, well, thank you. And then he said, hey, would you mind like becoming my songwriting partner? He said, and you need to get rid of everybody else in here, and like it needs to just be me and you. And I was like, okay. And so that kind of, because I admired him, that kind of like lifted me up, and I began to
absolutely.
I began to work with him. We did some songs. We did a song called Just a Little Bit, which came out on a UK label called Jack Tracks at the time. So we put that out, and then we put out another song called I Can't Stay Away. We put out I Can't, those two songs. And then the next thing that happened was Marshall did a song called Move Your Body.
Yes.
Which at the time, I told him that I didn't think Move Your Body would be very successful.
How wrong were you?
I was very wrong. And I tell you, because Move Your Body had I came from a disco era.
Yeah.
And like when you heard strings on the Chic record, they were very, what we call tight, very precise, very staccato, like all the Chic songs, like I Want Your Love, da, 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 da. Everything was very precise. Move Your Body was almost wild and a bit so the strings on Move Your Body were loose. They were like
yeah.
And the drums were like just the hi-hat was the lead instrument, and it was just different, but it was the rawness,
much freer. Yeah.
And that's what I didn't understand. It was the rawness and the energy of it. And even the backgrounds on it was like, they weren't tight. They were like, move your body, rock your body. The guys weren't together. They were like their timing was just, and it was just a very loosely, in my opinion, it was a very loosely produced record. But it was that street rawness.
Roughness. Because like often you can have a track and all of the difference is in the production.
Yes.
Sometimes you can make it too clean. And as you say, for that street underground sound, it's not really, what they want to hear. So it might not be as popular. But yes, that was a big hit.
Big hit. And so I had to, I had to eat my words on that one. I mean, I wasn't saying it out of like I was just like, because he was going on and on about how this record was going to be big and it was going to be like, and I was like, I don't know, Marshall. And he's like, watch. He said, it's going to be so big, I'm going to call it the house music anthem. And I was like, yeah, okay, that's a bit aggressive, you know. But he believed in it.
But it really did become the house anthem.
It absolutely did. But people don't know that that record sat around for a long time. Well, it sat around for almost a year. And and then no one wanted to put it out. And then Marshall paid to have that record pressed up himself. He gave the pressing plant money. And what happened was, the owner of Trax Records, who he had Marshall paid to press that record up, went down to this club called the Music Box, and Ron Hardy played Move Your Body right after Marshall had paid for the record to be pressed up. And the place went like berserk. Ron Hardy played it almost like 5-6 times in a row, like something crazy. And Larry ran back to the pressing plant and pressed the record up and put it out on Trax Record. It was supposed to came out on Marshall's label on the house.
Right. Now, you see, that is why it is so important to speak to people like yourself, because these are our stories and people don't know them. And I'm a big believer in talking to the people while they're here and honor them while they're here, rather than see a documentary on the BBC after they're gone. You know?
Well, I mean, that's Marshall's story, and I'm sure he could tell it. But I was kind of right there beside him. But so the thing was, Marshall had got in his group on the house. They had got an offer to go out and perform at the Paradise Garage in New York to perform "Move Your Body," and he asked me to come along to be the opening act for them. But I didn't know it, and neither did he. When we got out to New York, they weren't really playing my songs in Chicago, because in Chicago they were playing songs like ha 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 ha, all these tracks like, you know, you know, they were playing just songs.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
They weren't playing vocals. But what happened was, when I went out to New York with Marshall, soon as we got in the car to head to the hotel, I heard my 2 songs on the radio out there. And when I got to the Paradise Garage, they were like, we've been trying to find you for the last 3 months. Your records are big out here, and we wanted to.
What were the songs that you heard? What were the songs that you heard playing?
It was the 2 songs, Just a Little Bit and I Can't Stay Away. They were playing them in New York, but not in Chicago.
Wow.
And so, like, the guy from Trax Records who told me, oh, they want to book you, but you know, they want to book Marshall and you can go and open for him. It wasn't like they actually wanted me. He made it like, and he got money for me to come out there, but didn't tell me, you know, like, so it didn't matter to me though. But
you know, they actually wanted you more than they wanted Marshall.
No, I didn't say that.
You can say it. You can say it.
No, they didn't want me because Move Your Body was massive, but they wanted me as well.
Yeah.
And so when I told Marshall at the time, I said, hey, since we're in New York, there's a lot of major labels out here. I'm going to call around and see if we can get some appointments to go up and just meet with some people while we're out there. And so we met with different labels, and we met with Atlantic Records, and just struck up a really good friendship with Merle and Bob at Atlantic Records, where it was almost like instantly, like we met and we were like brothers, like from like soon as we met. And so I used to talk to Merlin on the phone, and he was like, hey, when are you going to do your record for Atlantic? And I was like, record for Atlantic? Are you serious? He was like, yeah. And so we went in and did the song Devotion. One of my friends loaned me the money, and we went in and put real strings. My friend Ray Barney loaned me the money, and we went in and did the song Devotion. Wow. And we also signed the song Someday by CeCe Rogers while we were out at Atlantic. Marshall had just finished that, and we got that signed to Atlantic along with CeCe's manager, Billy Press.
Well, I have to say, you said something very poignant earlier, that you felt house music was a very faceless music because there weren't much focus on the vocals, or there wasn't much focus on the vocals.
Right.
But I have to say, you changed that.
It's
You.
it's funny because even when it comes to me, I'm in person. I'm like, and by American standards, I'm 6'3", former athlete and big guy with this high voice, and I didn't really see myself as an artist. I almost want to be like a songwriter or someone behind the scenes, or I didn't see myself as someone being out front because of just the way I perceive myself and look. And so I decided to put together a group. I thought a concept of a group would be more interesting. And so I told Marshall I was going to do a group, and he was actually kind of against that at the time. He was like, "So you want to bring in more people to split the money with, And I was like, well, hopefully Marshall will be successful enough that
It's like
more
people in, but you're hoping to create something bigger.
Right. And so he said, well, if we're going to do a group, we should call it Intensity, because he said, I want to do music that's intense. And he just I told him, that sounds so corny to me. Intensity. I said, no. And so we were actually, as he and I do, we were actually, we have some very heated, not like angry, but we have some very, spirited debates, and we fuss at each other and tell each other how crazy the other one is, and like, how could you even think come up with a and so he kept saying intensity, and I said, hold on. How about take the IN off? And he was like, what do you mean take the IN off? I say, take the IN off, intensity, call it 10 City. And he said, I don't get it. I said, well, house music represents a utopia. The number 10 in the Olympics, if somebody gets a perfect score, they give them a 10. So 10 City will be represent the perfect place. It will represent utopia. It will represent the melting pot where everyone is welcome and people come together and this, and this. And he goes, I still think intensity is better, but I'll start for 10 City. So that's how we came.
That's what's great, because people come together and they've got different concepts and different perceptions of the same thing, and it's when you can meet the compromise that you really make progress, which clearly you guys did.
Yeah, and we do all the time. And it's like I said, he and I have a very I remember he was working on something, and I actually was right this one time. He was working on something, and he had spent like tens of thousands of dollars on this one record. And this was the one time I actually went the opposite way. He goes, what do you think? And I said, do you want to know what I honestly think, or do you want me to just tell you how great it is? And he says, what do you honestly think? I said, it's not going to connect with people because it's too produced. I said, you got 12 horns. When we traditionally we use 3 horn players and we would stack. I said, you got a whole orchestra, and it's just like, it's not going to connect with people. And so what was so funny is when I started saying what I thought was, all the guys who had been telling him how great it was, they go, yeah, he's right. And he was like, he got mad because he was like, you guys have been sitting here all along, and they're like,
just going along and saying, yes, master, whereas you, and probably that's why your relationship is so good, because he knows you'll tell him the truth.
I'll give him my honest perspective if he asks me, and he'll give me his honest perspective if I ask him. And sometimes even if I don't ask him,
he'll give it anyway.
Yeah.
But your voice is the falsetto that is just harmonious, and it brought harmonies to house music?
Mm. Well, I love soul music. You know, my grandmother grew up with B.B. King down in Mississippi, and I just love soul music. I sometimes DJs that sit up and talk about music, and I was like, have you heard such and such record, this and this, and they like look at me and they go like, no, what is that? Oh yeah, I've heard that, and they haven't, but you know, I'm not trying to be funny. I have a vast like knowledge of music and melodies and different eras, and so when I write, I'm able to draw upon like a lot of different eras of music and melodies and harmonies, and like I'll go like, well, you know, I remember the harmonies to this old Delphonics song, and I'll make the harmonies kind of like notes close together, like how theirs was, and I like even like the song we just did, Be Free, you know, like there are even like little notes. I mean, not like just the harmonies. It's like so and so would go this way on the note, whereas traditionally, like if it was perfect, it would go like this. But I'm gonna go right here because a lot of those guys who sung on old records, they weren't classically trained
singers.
musicians.
Exactly.
They were like
they just did what their voice could accommodate.
Right, and from their spirit. And so like I'll do different things like that on backgrounds or notes, and people look like, well, wait, that's not the tonic note, or that's not, like, don't worry about it. This is what we're gonna
It's not necessarily about the tonic note, it's about the feeling. It's about the feeling. But as I've always said, because when we spoke last time, because this is the second time I've spoken to you, I told you my all-time favorite 10 City track is My Piece of Heaven.
Wow.
My Piece of Heaven is just everything. And as you say, you can really hear your soul disco background influence coming through in that. The vocals, the harmonies, you can really hear the influence.
That was, I don't know if I told you before, that song actually got turned down.
Insane. Let me go and have a word with them.
And someone, and Dave Morales was playing it out in the club, and someone from the record label went in and heard it and said, wow, that would be a great song for the guys from 10 City to do. Who is that?
That would be a great song for the guys from 10 City.
It was us.
Did not even realizing he's listening to 10 City.
Yeah. What was it? Yeah. So, yeah.
Crazy. Absolutely crazy. So did you take a sabbatical from music? Because it seemed like we didn't see you for a long while.
I lost my voice.
Really?
Yeah, I got what you call calluses, nodules on my vocal cords, and I thought I just had a cold because I would go to hit notes and I couldn't hit, and then some days I was talk, and the only thing would come out would be like a whisper. And so I went to the doctor. He took like some mirrors and some x-rays, and he showed me calluses on my vocal cords. And so I said, I asked him, could he do surgery? And I was just getting ready at the time to sign another record deal at the time. And the doctor told me that I asked, could they do surgery? He said, I can do surgery, but it could be risky. I could damage, your voice could be damaged and you could never be the same again. He said, or you could rest for, I was like, how long? He said, maybe a couple years. And I was like, well, an artist, you don't sing for 2-3 years, people will forget about you. And I was just like, wow. He said, you could rest and not sing for a while, and it may come back on its own. And so I was going through life looking for a purpose and what I was going to do. And I started helping out at this school in my neighborhood, and they asked me that I have a degree, and I was like, yeah. And so I began to teach, and I taught, and then I went back to school and got my master's degree in education to teach, and then I got my master's degree, which allowed me in educational leadership, which allowed me to be a school principal. I became a school principal. And then my voice came back.
Right.
And then
so
you just said, you know what, school principal time is over. I've got to go back to.
no, I'm still the school principal.
You're still the school principal.
I've been a school principal for the last 13 years. And
Wow.
and I do that during the week. And then on the weekends, I go out and perform. I fly out on Friday. I get somewhere and perform on a Saturday night. Sunday, I'm back on the plane and I'm back home. And then Monday, I'm sitting at my desk. And so I've been doing both. And so like even with this album, I would be a principal during the day, and on the weekends I would be in the studio cutting my vocals. So it's
well, how inspirational is that? Because it just shows that you are committed to doing things and making a difference, and you're showing that it's possible. You can balance these two very almost opposing careers, because one is a daytime and one is an evening and nighttime, and
Yeah,
there you are
absolutely.
managing to balance both.
And it's good for me because I'm passionate about both, and I can't play with education because I have the future of young people's lives and things like that in my hand, and so I have to take that very seriously, and so I do that. And then I also have my passion for music, which it's so great for me right now, and I tell you why is because I do okay for my quote unquote for my day job. I do. You know, I'm compensated, and I can, and even from music, past royalties and things like that, I can, I'm able, I'm able to live a decent life financially and things like that. So the beauty of it now is like even with this album that we just did, is that when I go into the studio, this is like doing my first album, and I tell you why. When we did the first 10 City album, I was still living in my mom's and my grandmother's in the basement. And so I didn't have a care in the world like when we did our first 10 City album. All I had, I had a roof over my head. I had, only thing I had maybe at that time was a car note and things like that. And so I was just doing music that felt good, and even the record company had no idea what house music was, so they were like, here's your money, go do whatever it is you do. And and then after that, it had pressure, like you're doing music because now you got to pay for your home, the mortgage. You have, and now you have
responsibilities.
You got people that answer the phones down at your studio, and you got to make sure you got enough money to pay the girl that a girl, a guy, could be, or the receptionist, or this and this, or the engineers. And it's like now you got all these other people who are now you're responsible for,
dependent on you. Yeah.
And so now at this stage of my career, when we did this album, I didn't do this album for like money, or I didn't do it like, oh, I have to have a hit. I did it because it's something I want to do, and it's for love and fun, and I want to be creative, and I want to put my best foot forward. And I didn't have any of those financial pressures. I'm not sitting here, oh, it's gotta be as big as Bruno Mars, or it's gotta be this.
Yeah.
I don't have any of those.
That's not your agenda. That's not your agenda. I
mean, in the back of my mind, I do hope to. I know Top of the Pops isn't around anymore, but I do. That was my goal. I
remember seeing you on Top of the Pops. I remember.
I want to get back on Top of the Pops.
Hi, Top.
Yeah.
Yes.
And now it's like I do want to have music that touches people's lives and is successful, but it's not like I'm doing it because and it's
whatever we do, we kind of do it and hope that somebody apart from ourselves will appreciate it.
Absolutely. And so it's
we
good.
all have that. But you said something very, very poignant earlier, and two of the most influential things in our lifetime are music that have brought us pleasure over the years, because music is something that, as you put on the record, it takes you back to that place, that time, where you were going, what you were wearing, who you were with. So music and a good teacher. You can remember your primary school teacher
Absolutely.
The ones that were your favorites. So, you know, you going into teaching now and taking it really seriously and saying, you know, it's the future, our future generations that I'm giving this gift to is really important, because the value of, what should we say, an interested teacher, a conscientious teacher is priceless.
Yes, absolutely. And like sometimes I tell, like, you know, even teachers who work for me or whatever, I tell them, I said, you know, just think back to when you were a kid. I said, you may not remember the Pythagorean theorem or, you know, or this, but you remember how Mrs. or Mr. So-and-so, how they made you feel, how they inspired you, how they touched your life. Always be aware of that. Always be aware of the messages that you convey to students, that the hope that you give them. I was probably a different sort of kid. I actually had 2 teachers tell me that I would never be anything. And I
think a lot of people have had that in their school or in their scholastic career. The people that are, you know, the ones that they're supposed to look up to are the ones that are actually demoralizing them. You know, a lot of people have suffered that.
And so I often say, you know, but for me, I'm the kind of person that people don't notice. I'm actually by nature a fighter, and so like when you almost challenge me, I want to prove you wrong, you know, or when you tell me I can't do or accomplish something, I kind of lights a fire under me. So you might need to tell me I can never win a Grammy, or I can never have another top 5 pop record in the UK, and maybe that could light a fire under me.
And inspire you to work even harder.
Yeah.
So tell me, how did it come about that you and Mr. Jefferson got back together?
It was not his idea or my idea. But here's the thing: what people don't like, out of me and Marshall talk all the time, like
right, so you've never been out of contact?
No, me and him have never been out of contact. Like we talk trash to each other all the time. Like, you know, like I don't know.
Friendship.
Yeah, and that's what we do. Like we were on the phone like last night, just he was telling me something and I was giving him a hard time and he just started laughing, and you know, and so we never lost touch. And so when the record company contacted me about, hey, would you do a new 10 City project? I was like, yeah. And they were like, well, they said we have 2 stipulations. I go, well, what are the 2 stipulations that you want? And they said, we want you to redo Devotion, and That's the Way Love Is, and you could do whatever else you want for the rest of the album. We gotta have re-recordings of those 2 songs. I was like, yeah, I don't like to redo my own stuff.
Right.
So, because you're competing against your own self, or not competing, or you're going to be critiqued. And I'm not the same. I sing differently than I sang 35 years ago, and I didn't want people like, well, you know. And so, but I think it sounds pretty good. But they wanted.
Have you done my track? Have you done my track?
Piece of Heaven?
Yes.
No, I did not.
Right, this interview is over. Bye.
So, but those are the 2 songs they wanted. And then they said, and there's one other stipulation. And I said, what's the other stipulation? And they said, we want it to be you and Marshall Jefferson. And I was like, well, I don't see why that would be a problem. He's like my brother. And when they asked him, he was like, okay. But they, you know, sometimes people like, because they were like, kind of like, how do you and Marshall, how do you guys like get along? I mean, like, is he?
Yeah, because they weren't sure of the relationship, you see.
They weren't sure. They weren't sure. So they were kind of like, that was the last thing. They were like, you know, how do you feel about Marshall Jefferson? What are your thoughts on him? It's like, Marshall's dope, man. I mean, what do you mean? He's one of the originators of house. What can I mean, what do you mean? And they were like, oh, so they smiled. It's like, okay, so it's like, he's like my brother, you know?
It's not a problem.
Yeah, it's not a problem.
So as it is a 10 city project, is the lineup the same or is it a completely different lineup?
The lineup is differently. It's me, Marshall, and it's going to be some other musicians and things like that, some other vocalists.
Not the original guys of 10 City.
I mean, they're both like at other places in their lives right now and doing other different things. And the door's not closed to them. The door's not closed, but I kind of wanted to do it in the vid. This is without sounding too. I wanted to do this project in the vision that I originally had for 10 City, and not so much. Sometimes when you're in a group, a lot of times, or all the times you're in a group, it does become a compromise. Even when it's your conception and your baby, when you bring other people in, now it becomes. And I didn't want to. At this stage of my life, I didn't want to really do that as much. You know, like me and Marshall had to compromise with each other on some things. Like there's 1 or 2 songs he wanted to do that. It's one song he wanted to do that I wasn't necessarily want to do, and then once we did it, I was like, "Oh, this is a dope song." Like Marshall's, you have to let him do his thing, and I tell you,
to do what he does.
He produces music very differently than anyone else I've ever been around. And like sometimes you have to let him just develop his thoughts and his ideas.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So tell me, what is the name of the album?
The album is called Judgment.
Judgment. How many tracks on the album?
10.
As in 10 City. Easy to remember.
Yeah.
And the singles are, you said, Devotion and?
Well, there's still, like, I know they put out Be Free as a single. Devotion is out now. And I know that they're going to release That's the Way Love Is. And I think
a very big hit for you guys.
That was a top 10 pop record all over the world. #1 Billboard dance record, sold millions of copies. And there's some songs like Marshall wrote a song called Be Free and Love Is Just a Game. There's a song with Josh Milan called Better Man, where it's like kind of like one of those The Girl Is Mine type songs where me and him are both fighting for the attention of this young lady, and we're both like trying to say why we're the better suitor. Of course I win, you know, but no, but it's like I felt like a rapper because Josh got to do his verses after mine, and he got a chance to take a couple digs at me in the song, and I'm like, wait, I want to go and redo mine now. So,
I want to go and do mine now. That's right.
I got to redo it because he got a couple good like one liners off on me that like, wait, hey, what did he just say? You know, that type of thing.
Brilliant.
So that's really fun, and I just feel really good about this project. I think it's, I think for people who like 10 City music and like house music, we got stuff for every week. Like the people who like soulful house, we have some very soulful songs on there.
That's the one for me, the soulful house. That's
we got some soulful things. We got some songs that sound like traditional 10 City. Like, we used all the same instrumentation like that we used on the first album, and it sounds like very authentic 10 City. And then we have some things that sound like very futuristic as well. So
right. So with the voice, you rested, and did the voice come back? Is it the same as it was?
It's not the exact same, but it's. I'm going to say this. I think on some levels I may sound even more soulful. Like when you're young, it's like being an athlete. When you're younger, you can soar and you could jump and you could run fast and you could sing all over the place, all that. And so now it's just like it's more like soulful. It's more thoughtful. I think
harnessing and controlling the the gift.
Yeah.
That's very, very interesting. It's great that the voice has come back though, because some people lose it and that's it.
Yeah, and never get it back. So I'm very thankful. And even during this pandemic, I hate to sound like this, I know singers who over the last year have not been able to do anything. You know, they tour all the time and rely on shows, and they've sat home for all year. And because of you know, I was able to still work every day and then also do an album. And so I'm thankful. Like what I saw as something that was devastating at the time for, you know, without getting too deep, it's like I lost my voice. I lost a lot of things at the same time in my life. It was like, I felt like at the point in my life when I lost my voice, I felt like everything was being taken away from me at one time. And I almost felt like, why is all of this happening to me at once? And like some of the things that I thought were curses, I see that they were blessings in disguise.
Yeah, because sometimes we are in a position and we sit there because it's comfortable. We're probably not necessarily using our full potential, but it's comfortable and it's safe and it's easy. You know, so it's probably you lost that voice because the powers that be probably thought, you know what, he's got a gift to teach and lead in a different way, not necessarily in music. And here you are doing exactly that, which you wouldn't have done otherwise.
There's no way I would have done it. I mean, like I'm sitting on the beach in Ibiza, you know, I'm sitting in the VIP section at a club in Ibiza or Tenerife somewhere with Donatella. I remember I was sitting there with Donatella Versace one night. I'm sitting in the booth with Versace, Dave Morales, and then I got Boy George across on the table right next to us, and I'm going like, you know, just wow, you know, this is great. And I flew like one time I flew first class from London to Japan, then to Germany, and then back to Japan, and like all within a week. And I'm like, wow, you know, this is the life, you know.
It's a fairy tale almost. You can't believe it's happening.
I couldn't believe it happening. Walking out of my place on Albert Street, and I remember one day walking up the street, and I was actually singing. I don't know why I started singing. Some people work for a living. Some people work for fun. I just work for you. And I looked behind me, and George Michaels was standing behind me. You know, just like it's just like, you know, I'm like, this is just, as you say, a fairy tale. And so, to feel like that, you know, a lot of that was taken away. But I'm thankful just for the experience that I've had, you know, coming from where I come from, and you know, like going on Top of the Pops, performing at I remember when Kiss FM first opened, you know, as an official station, not a pirate station, to perform at the opening, and we got to close it out. It was like us, Aswad, and LL Cool J went on right before us, and no one ever heard Mama Said Knock You Out, and he went on right before us, you know, and you know, or like seeing Jazzy B over in London all the time, him and his sound system, and then looking up and everybody's soul to soul, and I'm like, that's Jazzy, you know. Or even people like, one of my greatest memories is coming to England and seeing the DJ Nigel, and I was just like, and then like didn't realize that Nigel was actually Nigel Benn, the boxer, you know, things like that.
Right, that's
just
true.
Great. Norman J, just, you know, a lot of great memories of people.
Memories and great scene here for music, for sure.
Great
but
scene.
It's interesting that you being a Chicago boy, the Chicago radio station and clubs weren't playing your music, but they were playing it in New York.
It was, like I said, it was different. It was different. Like, I think Tent City was at the time, like Chicago was very like at that time, like jack your body, jack your body. And even Chippy had all these like sample, you know, it's house, you know, it's house, you know, and like just even singing. I think maybe after us came like records like You Used to Hold Me, you know, a lot of vocalists, Parrish Brightlich's All Right, and CeCe Rogers Someday, and Kim Mazel, and you know, a lot of vocals came after us. But up until that point,
yeah,
house music was being done in a lot of people's 4-track bedroom studios and things like that. And so,
and
like,
it had that sound, and as you said, that's why it connected so well with the underground, because it had an underground sound.
yeah, it was very stripped down. Where disco like had began to have Love Unlimited Orchestra. I mean, you know, like MSFB Orchestra and all these house music, like couldn't afford all of that, and it was very stripped down. But it connected with the youth of Chicago and New York and Baltimore and Philadelphia and New Jersey, so and London.
Absolutely.
That was the goal. Like,
the voice, the falsetto voice right here, Mr. Byron Stingley is talking to you guys in London.
And that was the goal, to make it. You felt like if we made it to London, you made it.
Well,
like you were, if you made it to London, you flew across the Atlantic Ocean. You were internationally known now. Like you made it. Like I need to get to the Rome.
There's such a great music scene here, and your fans, because you still got a lot of 10 City fans here in the UK waiting for you to come back with this new album, and they want to hear what you're doing. So you still got a great support network here and fan base here in London.
Yes, and I love it.
We appreciate you taking time to talk to us. Thank you so much, and all the best with the new album.
Thank you so much, Barrie.
And
I can't wait to see the
inspiration that you are for those kids.
All right, thank you. And we're gonna get us some jerk chicken when I'm there together.
Absolutely, I can't wait. I'm gonna hold you to that. Believe me, I can eat a lot of chicken. Okay, I'm known. So I can eat a lot of chicken. So be careful what you ask for, sir. Take care. All the very best. Lovely to talk to you, and stay connected.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.